Welcome to Resilience Unravelled. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Thackeray. This podcast is a result of my fascination with health issues, resilience, performance, mental health, accountability and critical thinking, along with many of the other obsessions I bump into in my life. I spend my time working with highly successful teams, organisations and people, and this podcast introduces their remarkable stories, as well as my synthesis of the key issues, tips and strategies to thrive in life. If you find this podcast useful, you can also find other information at qedod.com or russellthackeray.com. Stay tuned to the end for details of how to order a free ebook. Enjoy the podcast. So today I wanted to talk about something a little different. Today is February the 13th, and I thought it'd be useful to put together a short podcast around how to survive Valentine's Day, which in most cultures comes on February the 14th, and is no exception here. And in the UK, I've had the experience of going to buy my wife's Valentine's Day card and wincing at the sheer extravagance, the pricing of Valentine's Day cards. Quite extraordinary. It's almost like for men there's a guilt pricing, because if you compare male cards and female cards, there's no doubt that the male cards are so much more expensive. In other words, buying for a female relative. And I thought it was interesting because there's a lot of hoojimmy-flippery around the Valentine's Day thing, and I wondered if actually one of the key things we need to get a grip on is this sort of fear of missing out. I think a lot of the time when we're talking about Valentine's Day, we're comparing our own experience against that of this very saccharine, very sugary view of Valentine's Day that's been put together by Hollywood and the film industry, not just in Hollywood, I suppose. And I wonder actually if we need to get back to grips with what it was all about. I think depending on how long you've been in a relationship will affect your view of what Valentine's Day is, its significance, its importance and such like. And you often find people who are newly together are madly in love and the chemistry is rampaging around their systems, and they sort of can't wait for Valentine's Day because there it is. It's yet another excuse to ravage each other, to lavish attention, presents, gifts, attention, all those different things on your partner, and there's nothing more exciting really. And then you come to people who are slightly more weathered in terms of relationships, either because they've had more than one relationship or because actually their existing relationships is a bit older, a bit more stable, a bit more sort of secure and steady. And you often find those people who are sort of can be slightly cynical about the whole Valentine's Day experience. They either don't like the cost of it. There's no doubt that getting a table for two on Valentine's Day is one of the trickiest things. That will cost you a premium. If you want to buy red roses, stand by to consider getting a mortgage, because that's quite exciting at the best of times. And most Valentine's Day places, even at your local garage, so I'm told. And there's no doubt that the cost of things goes up. And I think if you're in a more mature relationship, the sort of commentary is always made that, well, we don't need to bother with Valentine's Day because we love each other and tell each other on a regular basis. And I was interested in some research I read recently around the significance of Valentine's Day and those people who had separated. And almost universally, there was a sort of commentary on this idea that Valentine's Day had been sort of taken for granted. And I'd like to contend that however mature, however secure, however stable your relationship is, that Valentine's Day is just a good excuse to say things that you always think you're saying, but very rarely do. How often is it you actually say that you really love your partner and that you think the world of them, and that you're a great team, or whatever the phrases might be that you like to do. Certainly they're things I say to my partner, and they're because it's true. And I think it's one of those things you've got to think about. It's an excuse to use the occasion to remember how good you are as a team, as lovers, as partners. And sometimes it's an excuse really to be able to put kids to one side and say, this is a celebration of our relationship. It's not a celebration of us as parents. It's a celebration of how we as a couple, whatever state that couple might be, whether you're married, whatever it might be, however that might be, it's a celebration of us as a couple, as a statement, as a line in the sand of saying, here we are, we've reached the milestone, let's mark it and move on. Now, you don't need to book a table for two and go out for a lame Valentine's Day meal, if that just seems to be how can I say, a trophy event. If you go to work and everyone's chatting around the water cooler and they're saying, well, what did your husband do yesterday? Well, nothing. That seems a bit lame, but you could do something. And you can make each other a meal, you can make each other a card, you can buy a card, you can write a card, you can say what you really think about the card rather than just sort of ticking underneath the statement and the card that says, I love you, as someone once famously told me. And sometimes when he really loved them, he ticked the card twice. I mean, that just seems, even by most male standards, somewhat lazy and, heading for a biff in the face, I think, from a partner. So, but why don't you have a think about it? Why don't you deploy one of three strategies? You can avoid it totally, and that's fine. And you can both willingly say that, we're going to negotiate to avoid it. And often it's a really great idea that you do something, but not on the day itself. I mean, certainly this year it falls on Thursday. And so Thursday is not always the greatest day for going out if you're going to work and such like. So I know Saturdays and Sunday this week will be busy. Well, why don't you do the Saturday 4? Why don't you do a Monday evening or something along those lines? Trust me, your restaurateur will be pleased, and so will the food stores, because actually there's a huge sort of spike in demand for one night and it all falls off again. But why go out at all? Why not just do something together? Why not just... This is a novel idea that someone suggested to me. I'm not a fan of it myself, but why don't you sit on the sofa together and hold hands for 5 minutes? Now, I must admit, if my wife's listening to this, she'll be cackling with amusement at this idea because both of us have sweaty paws. But the symbolism's interesting, isn't it? It's about just for a short amount of time making an effort, stirring your stumps and actually doing something really without any expectation of return for the other partner. And we often find that actually it's the comfort in the relationship that makes us forget to make the effort. And often it's the comfort in the relationship that actually lulls us into this idea that we are making an effort, but we really are not. And we've got those rhythms and habits and patterns. I mean, one of the things classically recommended for a couple that are going through difficult times is to have a date night. Well, why wait? Why not just have a date night anyway? And why don't take the pressure off? Don't make it a date night so you have to perform, you have to have some sort of sexual outcome from the evening. Why don't you just go out and enjoy each other's company? Dump the kids somewhere and just have time for each other. I think we often get sort of swamped up to this idea of job roles, a mother or a father or a partner or whatever, but we very rarely lavish enough time on our relationships, and perhaps that's something you could do differently this year. I mean, for some people, of course, they go all in, they buy the roses, they book the table, they get dressed up, and they go out, and inevitably the trouble is that those expectations can be raised to such a level that it's almost impossible for any event to be able to really deliver the promise that was expected. And so sometimes it's better just to sit down before the event and negotiate what you'd like to do. If you're on the first flush, clearly it's all a surprise, it's all lovely, and fill your boots. But, as you get a bit older, why not negotiate what you want to do? Why don't you negotiate what it would mean for that person to know that they were loved by someone, and what would be a symbolic gesture to do that? You might be surprised how insignificant that gesture might be. The key is in the asking, the key is in the caring, and the key is in the delivering whatever was requested. And of course, some people do like a present, some people do like a surprise. Not that I'm shallow, but just saying. But the point is that if that is the thing, then put some effort into it and think of something exciting. But it doesn't have to be £1 million because you left it till the last minute. Think of something and give it a little bit of time and thought. It's an interesting thing to be able to liven up a quite dull month by using Valentine's Day to sort of put some light back into your relationship. Some people often go counselling on Valentine's night, which I always think is a hilarious idea. Only because there's a sense of absurdity about fixing a relationship in that particular way on a night of love. But, if that's what works for you, then why not? Why don't you use Valentine's as the first day to think about relationship and the relationship goals for the year? I mean, you had New Year's Eve and set your New Year's Eve expectations, and probably most of them have been ignored by now. But why not sit down and think, over the course of this year, how do we want our relationship to be? Do we want it to grow, stick the same? I mean, some people don't, actually want it to get worse, but because it's just too intense, it's too absorbing. For some couples, it can be a real challenge because all one of the partners wants to do is sit on the sofa, gaze into into the other person's eyes all night, not moving or leaving or or having any other sort of friends or anybody else in sort of intruding. And sometimes that can become a sort of tricky thing. But I think, sort of summarise, Valentine's Day is an excuse, so why not treat it as such? Why not treat it as such as a reason to just do something, just mark it symbolically. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. Negotiate, manage expectations, and come in with a bit of a plan. If you're going to go all in, fill your boots, have an exciting day. And if you're just going to have a sensible time, then have a sensible time. And just remember one thing, whatever you write in that card is the minimum expectation that person has. So put some effort in and make sure that whatever you're writing counts and is genuine. And who knows what might happen. I wish you happy Valentines.
We hope you found today's podcast useful. If you did, why not subscribe and listen to our other podcasts? We would love it if you could leave us a review. To access our resilience coaching, contact us at info@qedod.com. And finally, if you'd like to download our free resilience ebook, go to qedod.com/free ebook. Thanks for listening.